Welcome back to the 40% Better podcast. My name is Bill, and we'll be talking about all things technology leadership today. Rob Johnson, hopefully he's on that side of the screen, has graciously volunteered to help us today answer whatever question I may come up with and help give you some more thoughts about leadership roles in technology and how to do it well. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Now that we've got all the technology actually working.
That's right.
Yeah. It's okay. Before you got here, I was trying to get my microphone to work. I was like, what? Yeah, it always works. Yeah.
It's the blooper reel that no one ever sees. All the things I've done and never works right in the beginning. Never.
Right. Yeah. I'm like, oh, thank God,
Exactly.
So thanks for doing this. The kind of the starting point that I'm always curious about is, how did you start doing leadership? Like, did you start doing things that were leadership-ish before you got into technology? Like were you the kid that organized all the football games when you were 7?
No,
Or, how'd that work out?
Yeah. It's funny, I thought about that a little bit because I listened to a couple of your episodes and I knew that was kind of like the tee off question. And no, you would not have been able to pay me to run for office in high school. I couldn't organize myself, let alone a team. I was shy. I was not outspoken. I was totally not the person I am today. Yeah, it was a complete radical transformation. But I think you maybe hit on it at one point. I got into this business and, everybody starts at the bottom in theory, right? Unless you're a Nepo baby, everybody starts at the bottom. You got to work your way up. Although I guess I started maybe in the middle as an engineer. I didn't have to be a field tech or be in a call center. But right away, I was like, man, I know better than all of you people. I know what I'm doing. I could do this, right? And so I was like, I was striving, I was desiring to be a leader because I was like, I can do this better. I can make this work better. And getting in as an engineer, the first thing you see these guys walking around with the CTO title, and you're like, I want to be that guy. This was in the go-go 90s. Okay. I came into this in the late 90s in telecom, and it was just insane. These guys were rock stars. They were making millions. They were getting stock options in these great startup companies. And I wanted to be those guys so bad. And then, at some point in my career, I kind of ran in the opposite direction. And I wanted nothing to do with the title. People would try to make me oh, that's a CTO job. I'm like, no, I don't want that title. I don't want that title. And I realized I wasn't really running from the leadership part. I was running from the technology part. I felt like technology was shackling me into this role. And I went into product, did a lot of stuff in product, a lot of stuff on the business side. I tell people I got my MBA from the School of Hard Knocks, just learning in the live fire exercises.
Yeah.
And at some point came back around to, I can, maybe I can do this better than somebody else. I got into entrepreneurship. I started raising my own money. I started forming my own companies. And then, the CTO title kind of came back with the whole, well, you're the technical guy. There's 3 of us founders. You're the technical guy. We're going to make you the CTO. But it meant so much more to me at that point. I like to tell people, it's chief technology officer, a chief technical officer. Only one word is technology. If you're spending more than 33% of your time on technology, you're probably doing it wrong. I spend all my time on legal, finance, accounting, P&L statements, the things that make the business hum. And I'm just the guy that plugs in all the technical people into that process because a lot of them can't do it for themselves.
That is awesome. There is a whole lot to unpack there. Okay, I got to start at the beginning. When you started off, what kind of role did you have at the very beginning? You said you stepped into the middle. You weren't in the call center, and I'm like, oh, okay. So what were you doing?
Right. So I did a couple of degrees in engineering, University of Texas. I chose electrical engineering because I was stubborn and I thought I was going to be really good at it. It was one of the more challenging programs. It was either petroleum or that, and I had no interest in petroleum. Electricity fascinated me. Computers were awesome. And I got into this thing and I'm like, okay, I'm going to be an electrical computer engineer, ECE. And then there's all these specialization tracks. And I started thinking, my dad was in the military, that was his career field. My brother went into the military. That was his career field. And I was like, I have no idea what my career field is after this program, which is partly why I got a second degree. Was like, well, I'll just keep going to school. I'll figure it out then. And I got into this cohort of people working on networks. Because at the time it was like VLSD and you could design circuits, or you could be a software developer, but you might as well have got a comp sci degree while you were killing yourself in thermodynamics to be a software programmer. Didn't make any sense. And I got into this networking program. The head of the IT department at the university was also the head of this program, and he was basically teaching us how to be real world engineers. And I just had a lot of fun. I'm like, this is my passion. I'm an artist, and this is my medium. I have found my calling, and so I started doing that. I was really excited about that. But then I got in, so I say when I got in the middle, like I didn't have to start in the call center. I went right into an engineering role, decent salary, because electrical engineers, get a decent out of the program salary. And I was like, okay, I'm really happy with this. And then I'm like, oh my God, this is what I'm going to do every day for the rest of my life. And I was miserable. I was like, I got to get out of engineering as fast as I can.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, yeah. I
So,
ran away.
what, okay, what were you working on that was so horrible to begin with?
It's at the end of the day, it's the grind, right? Like you're an engineer and your job is to sit in the meeting and tell people that everybody's wrong and here's how we do it right. And I don't care how much money it costs. We need 6 layers of redundancy. I need 7 nines of reliability. I need to spend millions on equipment. And I would say these things, or I would sit with a team and somebody would say these things. And then in the back of my mind, I go, that doesn't make any sense. Why are we doing that? Like we could spend less. We could be more efficient. We could do this. What does the customer really think of this? And all these things are going through my head. And I would turn to my fellow engineers and like, you don't ask those kind of questions. That's not allowed. That's
Oh,
not what we do. And
oops.
and so, yeah, so I pretty quickly got into the product management, product development side because those guys get to ask those questions and they get to
Right,
get
right.
out with finance guys and understand how much money we're spending and where it all goes and how to account for it. And I just found that endlessly fascinating, that whole process. And so I
Oh,
ran away.
interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's yeah, that's funny because I started off at a startup as initially the first startup I went to, I actually started off in sales, and then I wanted to learn how to code. And so some of the engineers started teaching me, and then I was half and half. I would sell stuff in the daytime, and then at night I was at home on my computer at the office until 2 in the morning coding. Um, but that made me really comfortable talking with prospects, and product management became super easy. And so later on, I became the de facto product manager without having that as a title because we didn't think that far ahead.
Okay.
You know, nobody really thought about the title. It was just Bill's going to go figure out what the heck it is we need to build. And then, I'm getting the team to build it all, which is kind of interesting. So when you went into product, um, where did you start leading teams?
Well, you do it there, like right away. Like it was one of the things that really fascinated or really excited about it was you get into product and you're like the mini CEO for your space. And you have to learn soft power right away because none of these people work for you and your project is dependent on 30 people in 10 different departments. And if any one of them does something wrong or drops the ball, the whole thing falls apart. And then you're sitting in front of your actual CEO trying to explain why they didn't get their fourth quarter launch or their revenue number bump. And all they want to do is fire you because you did terribly. And you're like, but it's not my fault. Joe in accounting, you just didn't do. I apologize to all the Joes in accounting, by the way. Everybody named Joe was an accountant. I'm so sorry. But yeah, that guy ruins everything. And so you learn very quickly, how do you horse trade? How do you do things for yourself? How do you get people to want to do things for you? And then leadership comes like naturally from that. And then at some point I just found myself, it didn't matter as a consultant, as a product manager, as an executive, no matter where you dropped me in the company, like all of a sudden there's like this stream of people coming by my office. Like, well, what about this? And what about that? Can I help you with this? And it got to where, I could establish those relationships and leverage what I learned, I guess, as a kid on how to be a leader by watching people, do it well and then taking it out and making things happen.
What'd you learn as a kid?
We were talking about this earlier. My dad was in the military, so there's you get a totally different leadership lesson than like if your dad was an engineer growing up, and you'd probably get a different. If your dad was Joe in accounting, God bless that guy, you get a different education, different life story. But my dad was not only was in the military, he was a senior enlisted leader, so he had both a layer of management that he could never escape, which was the commissioned officers, and then he had all the people underneath him that he was responsible for. So he's the cartilage in the middle, and it was forward air control, so forward operations and
Ah,
so
yep.
that. those guys are a little ate up, and then you get the commissioned officers come in from different career field as a whole. So you just learn so much about, again, how to deal with people you can't control, but you need a specific outcome, and how do you get that outcome?
Nice. Yeah, that whole soft communication, getting what you want out of people, that should be a large part of college education because
Absolutely.
it seems like that. Yeah, because I remember my dad talking about how nothing that everything he did, everything that his team, that his uh, group did required everybody else to be doing stuff. There was nothing they did he could do by himself. And so whatever the mission was, he had to have everybody else happy about it.
Yeah.
And that his whole job was to get them all to be happy and like in alignment and all doing the right stuff. And that stuck in my head.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe
Yeah.
not so much happy as they're not sad or angry. They're
Right.
doing
Right.
it. Yeah, exactly. They may not be
Yeah.
happy about it, but they're doing it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
He was like, I remember him repeatedly talking about how his job was to make sure his troops had no stress. Like
Yeah.
like whatever it was, his people didn't stress about stuff. He would do grocery runs because people for the families of his guys who were on TDY,
Yeah.
he would be like, "Hey, what do you need for groceries?" And he would just go to the grocery store and get it, and then bring it to them. And like, because he was like, "I don't want them to worry about stuff. Their husbands, out of the country or wherever. Um, I don't want them. I don't want them worrying." And it was one less stressor.
Yeah. Yeah,
Um,
there's definitely an aspect of, like, servant leadership there, and the number of times that there's an outage or something, I'm completely useless. Like I said, there's a third of my job is technology, so I have these very smart people who work for me who solve all the problems, and I'm like, "Who's hungry? Rob's gonna go across the street and get some
yeah,
lunch."
but
What do you
that's huge though, right? Yeah, it's like they don't have to think about it.
That's right.
Um, and I think that's one of those. I think that's one of those pieces that like people oftentimes that are in leadership roles, like they don't think about that because there's no like this stuff doesn't get taught in school, you
Yeah.
know. And so your dad gave you some great lessons.
Yeah,
You know?
I think to your point, military is the ultimate team exercise. He was in the Air Force, air power on target. There's 9 people for every 1 person that flies a plane. It's a whole coordinated team effort. I think it should be taught in college. 100% agree. I've even at some point like, hey, when I retire, I'm going to go back do an entrepreneurship class. Like these are the things you really need to know. Don't
Right.
listen to the other guys. I actually did this. I know what's up.
Yeah.
Yeah, and but there are some companies though where I've hired people and they've come through my organization, and I'm just like, you don't understand soft power. Like you are in a
Right.
very siloed organization. You're very structured, very rigid, lots of rules to follow. Big companies, very ossified. And they'll come in here and they'll be like, I want to affect change. I want this thing to happen. I'm like, go make it happen. And they're like, but no buts. Go make it happen. Like there are no barriers here. There is no issue for you to resolve. It is merely a mindset thing. You need to change your outlook on life that you can accomplish this thing. Go get it done. Come back to me if you run into a roadblock. Come back to me if you go to poor Joe in accounting. You go to Joe in accounting and you won't do it. Come back to me and I'll talk to Joe's boss because he probably owes me a favor because I fixed his computer at some point. Let me help you with that. But your first step is to exude as much soft power and as much effort as you can to accomplish the mission, and then come back to me and tell me where the roadblocks are. Don't tell me where the roadblocks are in your mind. I don't want to hear about that. Those need to be gone. Yeah.
Right. Right. Yeah. So how? What are some tactical pieces of that puzzle that you do and I'm betting do well?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, self-deprecating humor is really important. Especially, if you're the engineer, you're the smart guy in the room, whatever, people like already off put, like this guy's going to be a jerk, whatever. So, I make fun of myself all the time. That's really important. Um, and I always give before I get. So when it comes to, I talk about horse trading and, Joe's boss in accounting owes me a favor. Somebody comes to me and says, hey, I need you to fix my computer. And like, I'm in the middle of a million things but you can see the look on their face. They don't know what to do. They're stressed. Something's due. I drop everything. I take care of it. Right. I make them feel special, but I also make sure that they're productive. And then, after a couple times of doing this and you need a favor, they're willing to do a favor. And then,
Right.
you don't even feel like jaded or transactional about it because it's servant leadership. You're leading by following, and you're leading by example, and you're making other people better for you having been there. I tell my team all the time, if you see me coming in the parking lot and you get a icy feeling in the pit of your stomach or a sense of dread or a wish to not be there, I'm doing my job wrong. You
Right.
should feel
Right.
that. You should be like, holy crap, Rob's here. He's going to knock out all the roadblocks. This is great. We're so excited. Let's do this. Let's all get pumped. Like, that's how I want you to feel when I walk in the room.
I like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah. And I really like that give before you get thing. Yeah, because that's such a in so many contexts, that is so powerful. And again, somebody should teach this in school. So when you retire, start yeah. Yeah, because so often that's not people's first reaction.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah. I think we even train people to be hyper competitive in college. Like my program was hyper competitive. Who had the best grades? Who did this? Who did that? Like they didn't even want to share information a lot of times. And I was like, the real world's not like that. Like it's not your individual score. There is no GPA when you go. Granted, you go before your review board and they give you a raise or don't give you a raise because of your personal performance, but it's not predicated on necessarily what you're doing personally. It's whether or not what you're doing is making a company better. And if it's not, frankly, they're doing their jobs wrong. So
right, right.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's such a huge, a minute ago you mentioned the military as a team sport. And that's such a it's such a great metaphor for how business is. That and if you're not thinking about how do you help the team operate better, then you're kind of in effect making the team operate worse.
Oh, absolutely.
Um,
Yeah.
and that's so that bothers me. You know? And yeah, because I want like you, I want my people to be happy and I want them to be excited that I'm there. And, it's like I want my kids to be excited when I'm coming home, you know?
Yeah.
Um, and I I think that's a it's a that's a leadership perspective that I think fits actual leadership well beyond just managing people like you're managing objects, you
Yeah, and
know?
actually, that's a fantastic analogy because I definitely draw a very distinct line. I did many, many years as a consultant, very distinct line between management and leadership. You can manage projects, you can manage money, you can manage budgets, timelines, milestones, tasks. You cannot manage people. You must lead them. They are the X factor. They are going to do crazy things. They might do crazy things for you or crazy things against you. And your job is to, go for the former, not the latter. You want them working with you, not against you. But you can't manage them like you can manage a budget. You can't pick a person up, drop them over here, and say, well, this person was additive here, now they're additive there. You could totally break the team dynamic, not understand how they actually contribute to the team's success, and all of a sudden you have two broken teams because I think it might have even been on one of your podcasts. I heard a story about they put a rock star next to a real drag because they thought the rock star would elevate the drag, and the drag convinced the rock star to quit. And like 6 months later, they got an email saying, "Hey, I'm really sorry, I screwed up. I shouldn't have quit." But the whole thinking process was that rock star individually and alone was going to elevate this other person, and they didn't understand the dynamics of the situation, and they end up putting too much on the rock star inappropriately, and it didn't work out. So people are the X factor. You've got to lead them. You can't just manage them like pawns on a chessboard.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I totally resonate with that. Yeah, that's such a and it's funny because every time I hear about a people management program, I think you missing the point,
Yeah, what are we
Like,
teaching
yeah,
them?
yeah.
Like, we know how to fill out a form. I know how to
Yeah,
fill out a form. I don't need that. Leadership has to be learned, and
yeah,
it's learned in the
yeah,
field by example, by rote practice. You can't go to a seminar and learn how to lead people.
yeah, yeah. As you've been going through this journey of learning how to lead people, what are some of the tactical pieces that you've 'cause you mentioned earlier on that you're not the same person you were when you started down this road. Like, what are the inflection points along the way that you had to work that you like, oh yeah, I used to be X and now I'm Y, and here's what happened that made that transition?
I think it's a 180 on everything. I mean, even some of the things that, I already mentioned, being willing to do something for somebody else, and the number of times, and, you're first starting out and you're all about yourself, and, you think you know more than everybody because you don't know what you don't know. And, it's been a real learning process for me. Shutting up is really important. I used to talk a lot, listening, um, actually trying to understand people and not just like filling my head with whatever the next sentence is going to be. So I apologize if at some point I pause and you're like, is he okay? I just hadn't planned anything yet because I wasn't thinking that far ahead. I was trying to be a better listener. But I definitely advocate for that one. There was a story about a former president. I won't bring up politics as to tell you which president it was, but he had this habit of sitting at the end of the table and waiting and then talking. And I watched some people that I admired their skill in the boardroom, and they did that. They wouldn't just talk for the sake of talking. They wouldn't just. I worked with a guy in kind of a mid-level leadership role, and he one time reached out to me after a call and said, "Why didn't you say anything?" I said, "You guys are doing great." I had nothing to add. It was perfect, and it was perfect without me, which was even better because I could have then hung up and gone and done something else. And he said, "Oh, no, no, I have to be visible on every call. I make sure that I have a list and I jot this down. I have 3 comments that I make so that people know I'm there." And I'm like, "Brother, if that's how you have to let people know you're there, you're not there."
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, that's interesting. God, now I got to really think back. I think the corollary of that for me is that I never want to be the smartest person in the room, or I never want to, even if I am, like, I never want that to come across as to anybody else's head.
Yeah, 100%. It's very, it's hard enough going into a room, I'm almost 50. I've got 30 years experience. I'm carrying the title. I go into a room, you've got to recognize that even your presence is changing people and changing their behavior.
Right.
There's a book that I was forced to read at one point during a strong leadership transition in my career where I was struggling with some things, and I hated the book. I hated the guy's attitude, and I read it, and then like I got about halfway through, and I don't know, maybe something popped in my brain, and I started over and I reread it. I still hated a lot of it, but he was right. He was 100,000,000% right. That once you get to a certain inflection point, once you get to a certain level in your career, you kind of have to do the opposite of everything you've ever done. You have to shut up more and listen more. You can't get angry like you used to because that anger sits with people. You have a passing frustration. I kicked a trash can once, but in the last 2 years, I had a passing moment of frustration. But I know that the person that was in the room when I kicked the trash can was like, "Wow, Rob's really mad." Like, "Oh my God." And then so I was like, "Hey, it's okay. I'm a petulant child. I'm perpetually 6 years old. And I kicked a trash can because I'm not a grown up and it's fine. I'm okay with that." But, yeah, you have to transform. You have to the pendulum has to swing so far in the other direction away from where you were because you have all these internal biases where you don't see when you get angry how scary it really is. When you make a joke at someone's expense, how hurtful it really is. You don't see these things and you don't realize, and maybe being a dad was part of that, being a parent, but learning that. But this book really, like, it had, like, 20 things you shouldn't do, and I'm like, "Yeah, I do, like, 5 of these things at least on a regular basis. I gotta cut that noise out?" So,
Okay, I have to ask you, what's the book?
what got you here won't get you there. And it's
Mm.
about got you into leadership won't keep you in leadership. It's stories about people in leadership who had one or more failings, and this consultant who wrote the book, who doesn't always follow his own advice. In fact, a couple of the stories are about him and things he learned, but he's definitely one of those guys. In a couple of those stories, you could tell he's like, "I'm the smartest guy in the room," but he was right about some very specific things, and he talked about people's motivations and some things that I thought were a bit. They challenged me at a moral level to accept that maybe some people's motivations aren't entirely pure. everybody's out for themselves and everybody's there to make a buck. But, if you want to really reduce it to that level, that's fine. But at the end of the day, he was 100% right. All of his advice was spot on. And if
Okay,
you
now,
I don't remember the author's name, but you can go to Amazon, you can Google it.
yeah, I can go. Yeah, after this show, I'm going to go look for it, and
It's not a long read. It's great.
yeah, I'll be curious. But yeah, I'm always one of the things I'm always looking for is better mental models. Better belief structures, because what I've found has been that when I improve my mental models, I improve my freedom in the world. And what you're talking about with flipping your perspectives is you're flipping your mental models,
Right.
and that's such it is a non-standard behavior, because I found that most people they don't have the self-awareness. So props to you for the self-awareness to do that. Whatever the background machinery is that makes that happen. Yeah,
Yeah, that's at
that's
School of Hard Knocks. That's all
okay.
in a lifetime in the job. But no, it's funny because it's like the event horizon of a black hole, right? So you don't necessarily know you've passed through the event horizon, but you can no longer escape. And at some point in my career, like I'll go, whoa, like I'm inside the black hole at this point. Like I have flipped this script. And then and I think in part it's because I see it in other people. Like I see somebody come in here, but the case in point of the person who comes to you and says, I can't. My mom growing up said, can't's a word that never did anything, right? And that always stuck with me. Can't,
Mm,
doesn't matter. Those are words that never did anything, right? And I'll have people, again, they'll say, I want to effectuate this change. I say, great, go make that change. Be the change you want to see in the world. And the first thing you'll get back is like, well, I can't, or here's my list of issues. And I actually have a drawing on this board over here that I use as a prop. I won't break it out for you. But basically people live in a box and they've built that box around their existence.
right.
And I see these people come to me and I'm like, I was you. I was in the box. I'm outside of the box now. Come out here. The water's fine. We have cake, whatever. Um, and to help people learn that and to see them grow as individuals and as team members, where they're learning that a lot of the limitations that they grew up with or that they thought were there are constructs of their own mind, of things that they just are avoiding, right? But yeah, it's so surreal to be sitting on the other side of the table and going, oh, that used to be me. Did I really sound like that? But it's true. Yeah.
We all, that's the growth process. We at some point in time, we know we were that other person. That's
Yeah.
yeah. It's the neuroplasticity at work. You know,
Absolutely.
your
Absolutely.
your
And
brain
to your
keeps
point,
going.
some people, maybe they don't have so much plasticity, but you got to assume everybody does, and you got to try to help them as much as you can.
Yeah. Well, they have the potential.
Mhm.
We'll put it that way. They have the potential. It's kind of their choice what they're going to do with it. Like anything else. Are you gonna go for it, or are you gonna be scared to change?
Yeah.
Um, it sounds like you're pretty comfortable with risk.
Yeah.
Like change and risk seems to not be a big deal, not a hardship for you.
Yeah, I was doing the math the other day, the number of startups that I've done, the periods of unemployment or underemployment that I've endured from doing startups or taking a risk and it not working out. My career was not a straight line. But I also, my wife accused me of maybe enjoying it a bit too much, the startup life, because I went like from one startup to another, and I raised 150 million at the last place with like 150 million backstop, and then I came here and raised another, X number of millions, and it's like no sleep, no break, just keep going, keep doing it, because I like it, it's fun. But you're right. At some point, you have to get comfortable with that risk. I mean, the number of people who, again, with those mental roadblocks, who say, I have this great idea, or I really want to achieve this thing, or I want to change my career, I want to go into this other area. And I'm like, just do it. Just do it. And they're like, oh no, risk, scary. And I'm like, well, that's fair. That's why we're not all entrepreneurs. We need, reliable people in every organization. That's part of the team, right? But if you're going to start a company, if you're going to be in the leadership suite, you've got to get really comfortable with risk. What is it? Somebody said earlier today to me, you got to get really comfortable with being uncomfortable.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, that's 100% true. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's one of my core values is, and I was thinking about it earlier today, given the choice between the comfortable choice and the uncomfortable choice, I picked the uncomfortable choice
Yeah.
most of the time. Although I will say I have a very comfortable bed and I don't
Gotta
like
have
to,
that.
gotta have that, right?
Important.
But yeah, I'm going to dinner after this
Mm.
and it's 15 miles away and I'm bicycling there.
Okay, that's uncomfortable. That's a bridge too far. I'm sorry.
Yeah, yeah. But I'm like, I could drive there, but I'm like,
It's
it'd
15.
be a great bike ride.
It would. It would.
It's gonna be a great bike ride there. It's gonna be a great bike ride back.
Yeah.
It's all like because it's someplace I've been before. I'm like, well, there's no the route that I use. There's no busy streets.
Mhm.
There's a bunch of bike paths. I will get to see all the Christmas lights in slow motion. Right.
It's a journey. The journey is part of the gift, right?
Yeah,
You get the
exactly.
journey.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking this is why it's going to be awesome and wonderful. And so in my head, I realized, well, what I've done is I've made it actually not the hard thing.
Yeah.
I mean, the fact that I'm on the bicycle, yeah, so what, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
I bicycle a lot, so it's kind of, it's an easy choice for me. But all the benefits of it, I'm like, oh yeah, I'm going to get, all these things that are really good about it. And oh yeah, it's on the bicycle, which
Yeah.
it's a, yeah. I think it's the risk thing, right? Oh, I'm going to do the hard thing. And the hard thing always seems risky
Yeah.
until afterwards.
Until it's done. Yeah.
So yeah. And then you're like, oh, like,
That wasn't so bad.
yeah, it wasn't so bad. Yeah. It's like, doing startups is what was the first startup you did? Were you one of the founders or were you
Oh.
an early employee or
I was early. And so I started out in telecom. I jumped right out of college. Like I said, I was still getting my degree, my second degree, my master's, and I was working at the same time. And I was kind of bouncing around. It was the go-go 90s. People were making more money. You could kind of kick it to another place. People were making tons of money at startups. All my buddies from that first job within the first 2 years had gone to startups. And I'm like, well, I need to go to a startup. And I ended up at a startup. It was a really weird situation. I wasn't the first employee, but I was the first like full-time engineer. Let's put it that way. We had a CTO. He was part-time, great guy. Still keep in touch with him. He was actually semi-retired down in Port Aransas. And so he wasn't around all the time. So basically I was like the voice of technology and I was the first like real engineer that they'd hired. And I show up and I'm employee like 30. And I was like, how are you a technology startup? I'm your first engineer.
wait, what? Back up there. That doesn't make sense.
So, well, it does. It does. So the CTO, he had a team of consultants. So they were all, again, kind of part-time. So helping out. So it wasn't like we were technology bereft, but the founders were all MBA guys that had all gone to school together. They're all part of the same MBA cohort there at the university. And they had hired like 12 interns from the MBA program because this, again, the go-go 90s, the early 2000s, like the goal was to raise money, right? And so they're cranking out decks and spreadsheets like it's going out of style, feeding this stuff off to investors to raise money. We were on Series C. Like they'd already done
What?
Angel A and B. We had no engineers. We had no designs, but we were on the cusp of, I went out on the road show for the Series C. We raised 22.7, which back in 2000 was a pretty hefty Series C.
Yeah, yeah.
And yeah, like I built the engineering team and all that. And this was, again, one of those strong leadership learning opportunities. I learned a lot, especially because it was rough in a couple of patches. And we were doing one of those, like you said, we were doing those really hard things. And so it was a lot of fun. And I got the bug, I got hooked. Like I'm entrepreneur for life at that point. Like everything since then was couched in the viewpoint of like, this is not a startup. Like even I ended up working for a time for an international PTT, and it was like startup within a gigantic company of 250,000 people. Like that was our focus. Like we were always finding ways to build small teams and do great things. And so it was a lot of fun. You mentioned hard. I want to give a shout out. I went to the University of Texas. So I'm a big fan of JFK's speech in Houston. Why does rice play Texas? I don't know if you're familiar with the speech.
Oh no, I don't know that.
It's a great speech. You're going to have to Google it. It's another thing you're going to have to Google.
Okay, deal.
It's the one where he says, he talks about sending a man to the moon. It's back in, I think, 61. And he says, why are we going to send a man to the moon and bring him safely back to Earth in this decade? And he says, we're going to do these things and the other things. And he says, why do we do this? Why do we do the hard things? We do these things because they are hard.
Yeah.
If they were easy, we let somebody else do them. We are choosing the hard path because we want to blaze that trail, and there's no one else to do it. And so when you're an entrepreneur or you're a startup, you're the first engineer in the building, you're blazing a lot of trails. I effectuated a lot of change at that organization just by showing up and having thoughts. And then they're like, oh yeah, we could do it that way. And before you know it, the world had bent, and I was like, wow, this is pretty awesome. I love this, and got the hook, man.
You should write a book on the bug of entrepreneurship in that regard for people who are more risk averse.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And now I'm the one taking notes here. Hold on.
Yeah. Okay, good. Yeah.
That's great. I'd love to do that.
Yeah.
I do, because I see it in people, like I said, every day. And it's like, how do I translate that? Because that's almost ephemeral. It's so hard to hold, and how do you translate that, and how do you bring it to people? Because frankly, I think the world would be a better place if people took a few more risks, maybe cared a little bit less about what people think, and a little bit more about what they really are passionate about and what they want to do, and just get out there and do it.
Yeah. Yeah. I 100% agree with that. How did you, as a kid, what did you do that was risky?
Again, this is a massive human transformation. Going back to my very first answer, like I was mega risk averse. I was the chief of risk aversion.
Really?
Oh yeah. No, I didn't even.
Wait a minute.
I wouldn't go outside. I stayed inside and read comic books and lived in the fantasy world in my head because I was afraid of bugs and dirt. I dreamed of hermetically sealed environments, like that was even a thing. Like I had this fantasy that I could hermetically seal my home, and I could walk so that there was a disinfectant before I entered my home. Like I was that guy.
Oh my God.
Yeah, totally. Just massive transformation. I mean, at some point, I don't know what happened to me. Like I said, I got the bug. I was on the hunt, and before you know, I look back and I'm like, wow. When you look at like my career versus the very linear people that I meet and all the things that they did, and I'm like, my career looks like a dumpster fire, just clumps of stuff. Like, how did that happen? I was in wireless, I was in cable, I have patents in cable, I was in international, I was underemployed, I was an inventor, I was an engineer, I was a product guy. I took phone calls. I said I didn't start in the call center. I absolutely, as a CTO, we had an outage one night, and all my people had gone home. Their shift was over, and I put on the headset, routed the phone number to my desk, and waited for the next call until the new shift took over. Like, this is what you do, and
Yep.
yeah. If you look at that from a linear progression perspective, you're going to be woefully disappointed in the path that I followed.
So it's really interesting. I haven't met well, okay. I'm trying to think of anybody I've met who, as an adult, is very risk tolerant, who wasn't also risk tolerant as a kid. Like that is ayahuasca journey. Like what happened?
You're going to scratch that one off your bingo card. Congratulations. No, it really kind of feels like that looking back. Cause I was very in my zone. I didn't take risks. I was very good at school. And so I did school, I was terrible at T-ball. Like, how could you be terrible at T-ball? I was awful. Like, all I ever did was hit the tee and the ball would just fall. And then one day, but I loved it because I was like, oh, the camaraderie to be with the other kids. And then one day they said, yeah, guess what? You've leveled up. They start throwing them at you now. And I was like, no way, buddy.
Yeah.
I tell the story because that's when I realized that I needed glasses. When I was having trouble seeing the board because I was in a much bigger classroom, and I was like, I can't really see this. I had to walk up to it a couple times, and my excuse for years was I quit baseball because I had this bad vision problem and I didn't realize, and I couldn't see the ball coming. And the reality was I was scared to death that they were hurtling that spear at me. And why was I even participating in this? Please, can I go home now?
Well, being hit with a baseball hurts.
Yeah.
It is a very painful, and concussions are reality. And back then, they probably didn't have the best protective helmets for batters.
Nope.
So survival. Yeah.
Yes. And I will say, you know, I've learned this. I coached my kids in softball, and we coach pitch on the first cut. And I swear, when I was a kid, they were letting those kids throw at us. I'm like, that kid is no bigger, smarter, or more capable than I am, and I can't hit the broadside of a barn. How is that guy going to avoid my face with that ball? Yeah, it was mind numbing. Just the
Yeah. Yeah.
existential dread of dragging that bat to the plate, not wanting to participate. But no, yeah, when I was coaching softball, I was up there. I'm like, I'm leaning into the pitch, and I'm trying to like send him off in different directions. Like total transformation in my mindset when it came to standing in that box.
Okay. So that's awesome that that's possible. Even if you can't explain to me the step-by-step progression. So this is a research project for you. That would be a great book if you can actually explain how you did it.
That is, you know what? We do these things because they are hard. That sounds legit hard, but I'll put some thought into it because
Yeah.
I honestly, like I said, I've done so many things and I've made so many like career pivots, and you know, how did I get here? You know, that's an interesting question. I'm going to meditate on that.
Yeah.
I may come back at you, may do a part 2.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
answers.
Yeah. Because so I'm very much a systems thinker,
Mhm.
and I will fully admit this, by the way, on record, that 10 years ago, if you told me I was a systems thinker, I would have told you were crazy.
Mhm.
Because I didn't realize that I automate systems and then I abstract them. Like, so I've done water sports my whole life. I started off competitively swimming, and then snorkeling, and then scuba diving, and then surfing, and then water skiing, and then windsurfing, and um, whitewater rafting.
Wow.
And so for me, whenever there's a water thing, like automatically in the back of my head, it's like, oh, this is like some 12 things I've done, right? Like when I started whitewater rafting, I looked at it and I'm like, okay, this is kind of like, in a way, it's like outboard canoe, which I didn't, growing up in Hawaii, we did some of that sometimes. And I'm like, and you're trying to go between, so it's kind of like, and like in my head, I had this structure built of stuff I've already done,
Mhm.
right? Someone had to actually lay out for me that I was doing this like 5 years ago. And then all these other things kind of like clicked into place.
Mhm.
And I was like, oh, that's how come I can do that. Oh, and and all of a sudden now I'm like, oh, everything I do is a system,
Yeah.
100%. And if I can't figure out right up front that it's a system, it just means I haven't recognized the pattern yet. And so I want to know what your system is,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
that
Me
makes it
too.
transferable. Yeah. Yeah.
But no, and I've already thrown out a few analogies. I love an analogy. I analogize a lot of things. It's that same abstraction concept is how do you get 80 to 90% of the way there without even trying? It's I did this in a different way in a different place, and now I'm applying that knowledge here.
Yeah.
It's perfect, but now all I'm doing is refining a system that I already understand, and I know which system to apply, and there it is. But yeah, getting there, sometimes it's just it's a leap for me, even now. I
Mm.
still understand how all the systems work in my brain, and playing the Wordle every day, and I have this buddy, and he tries to get it as fast as he can, and he makes these crazy leaps, and I'm so proud of him. And then I do it, and I'm like, it's the same 3 words every time. It's okay, I'm starting with this, and then okay, and unless certain conditions apply, and then every time that happens and I deviate from my 3 words, I do worse. So I'm just like, nope, nope. I have a system, and I understand how it works, and that works for my brain. And
Yeah.
there's one of those running in the back of my brain all the time. I just don't know what it is.
Yeah. Yeah. Subroutines.
Yeah.
All subroutines. Yeah. Yeah. Like I used to have really bad social anxiety,
Mhm.
and I built myself a system to get out of it. And did and I've taught other people how to do it. So I know it works because if they can replicate my results, then the system works. Right? It's like
Science.
math, you
Science. Yeah.
know. Yeah. But so now every time I see somebody doing something, I'm like, what's the system?
Yeah.
What's going on behind there? Especially when you transform from being like risk is a thing for people, right? like I was kind of risky as a kid.
Hmm.
And so being risky as an adult totally makes sense for me.
Hmm.
Um, I haven't, I really, I don't know. You're the only person I can think of right now that was risk averse as a kid and very risk tolerant as an adult. Like that's a very interesting. So I'm like, okay, what happened? You
Yeah.
know?
I will say at one point there was like, call it an epiphany, an aha moment where like I realized I am operating without a net. Like I was a dad, I was a husband, I was the breadwinner. I wasn't relying on my parents' income. I was self-sufficient, and I realized I got laid off from that startup. I was a layoff of one. Does that count as a layoff?
Yeah, yeah, it
Yeah,
still
yeah.
counts.
I was no,
Wait,
I
they
was
laid off the only engineer?
no, I had built a great team running a bunch of guys. I might have been laid off for cause. I'll put it that way.
Oh, okay. Got it. Yeah. Okay.
But yeah, and like I was unemployed for months. And it was a very tough time. It was the dot bomb back in whatever 2001. It
Mhm.
was a struggle. So maybe that was my transformative moment where like like I said, I realized I'm operating without a net. And a lot of my philosophical sort of yarns date back to that era, and then things I've just sort of spun and spun and spun since then. Um, but I definitely think you should write your book about the system for social anxiety. I think that'd be very valuable. I know a lot of people with social, especially this generation. Maybe your system could be useful to them.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I'm actually working on that book to tell you the truth. I
Okay.
haven't told anybody that. So yeah. No, actually, yeah. It's I I've taught enough people, and people keep asking me like, "Have you written this?" And I kept saying no. And finally, I was like, "Okay, fine. I'm going to write the damn thing."
Yeah. Gotta get it.
Um, it's it's mental models. Like for me, everything is you got to have a mental model, right? You got to have a like, why am I doing this? Um, And then have you read, Tiny Habits by BJ Fogg? He's a Stanford, prof. He talks about, habit stacking, and you have a system where you're building a stack of tiny habits. Like,
Hmm.
swimming is a stack of tiny habits, right? You learn how to hold your breath and put your face in the water, right? That's the first successful habit.
Right.
Um,
Key habit for swimming.
yeah, key habit for swimming is be able to hold your breath in the water, right?
Exactly.
Because without that, it just gets really
It's
uncomfortable.
ugly quickly.
Yeah. And then you start adding other things onto that depending on how your swimming instructor is teaching you.
Mhm.
Um, and so I just built out, and he calls them recipes. So I built this stack of recipes, um, starting with 2-minute conversations and then going up from there. And now I like public speaking.
Mhm. Wow.
But it was, I just kept, and that basically the book is here's the stack, right? Here's the mental models. Here's how you control your brain chemistry, your emotions, your fear. Because I use the same skills for that all the time. Like I have a half a dozen of those that I use. And then here's how to make each step along the way less. It's uncomfortable, but you're not in the panic zone,
Mhm.
right? It's outside the comfort zone, but well inside the panic zone.
Yeah.
And you just keep stacking those up. And it's like learning the first time you hold your breath underwater. It's kind of scary.
Yeah, it's unnatural. What are we doing
Yeah.
here?
Right, right, and then the 10th time, you're like, "Oh, this is no big deal," and then if you're like one of my kids, you know, like, you can't get them off the bottom of the pool and they're 3, and
Yeah.
they're like, "Hi, dad. This is fun,"
Yeah.
Um, so, yeah, it's same thing with getting over social anxiety. Yeah.
Absolutely. I think it'll be a great book. I'll
Cool.
help promote it.
Okay, good, awesome, I'm glad to hear that. Yeah, I'll send you one of the drafts, and you can tell me what you think of it.
Oh, absolutely.
Um,
Love to.
yeah, cool. Uh, any other great advice you have for people that are thinking about getting into leadership roles because that's the way their career looks like it's going?
I would say a lot of this is counterintuitive, right? Like lean into the counterintuitive. Like and great example, these guys that I get, they come from these management programs and they're on the fast track and they're at these big companies and they're rock stars at their company, and they come and they have this very rigid mindset, which is like, again, with the soft power versus hard power. I don't do that because that's not in my job description and that's not in my team's job description. And that is another team's responsibility, and they are not affecting their change. And I am watching them fail, and it just stop. Like, counterintuitive, push to pull, lean into the wind, right? Like these things that people, they think, oh, this is how I'm supposed to do it. This is how it always is. This person works for me, so they're supposed to do what they're told, right? 100% counterintuitive. Those people will never do what they're told just because they work for you. They need to do it. They need to do what you want them to do because they want to, right? You need to make them want to. And sure, sometimes making them want to is, hey, it's that, or you don't get money anymore. But you've got to lean into the idea that you're not controlling them. Control is an illusion. Everything you think is right is wrong, and be open to those possibilities, because you will learn. And it is a 180 to go from being risk averse to risk tolerant, to go from seeing roadblocks and how things can't be done to how things can be done. I'm very much a get to yes guy. And I think that's been a key part of my success, is when somebody says, my CEO called me up earlier today and he said, hey, I know we designed for X, but I'm wondering if Y makes sense. And, engineer Rob would have been like, that's dumb. You're dumb. Hang up. Like, this conversation is stupid. I don't even know why we're here. Hang up. Get to yes, Rob is like, let me see how we can get to yes. And then I might tell you, we got to yes, but it's actually a really horrible idea. And here's why. But he's going to take that feedback a lot better, because he's going to hear that I put in the effort. I listened to his idea, I put in the effort, I evaluated how it would work. And I may also lean into coming out of this with the idea that, in fact, I was wrong in my initial assumption. He was right. And this is something we should do. And then be open to that. Like, there are no points in this world for being right. Okay. There's points in this world for doing right, being a good person, getting the job done. There are absolutely no points for sitting across the table telling somebody that you can't do this and here's why, and being 100% right about it. Because not only did nothing get done, but everybody hates you.
I like that. Yeah. I really like that.
Yeah. And a lot of people over the years have accused me of wanting to be right. I said, no, I want to be wrong all the time. I want to be more wrong before breakfast than most people are wrong all day. I want to be wrong. I want to learn new things, and learning new things means being wrong. I want to do great things, and putting the blinders on and telling yourself these great things are unachievable. You need to be proven wrong, or you're never going to get out of that box. So maybe that's it. Just being proven you're wrong and being okay with it.
Yeah. That's a thing. Richard Feynman used to talk about how he loved to be wrong, and to go into places where he had no clue how things worked,
Mm-hmm.
because of the learning opportunity.
Yeah.
And that's the thing about being wrong, is you get to learn.
Yeah.
It's like, and maybe that's also, maybe getting used to that is how risk becomes not such a big deal,
Mm-hmm.
because you recognize the upside is, oh, I'm going to take this risk, and if I'm wrong, I get to learn some stuff.
Yeah.
And that's if the worst case scenario is, oh, I get to learn some stuff, then that's a win.
Yeah.
You
Well, I'm just honored that I get to be in the same conversation as Feynman. That's pretty awesome. I'm gonna tell my wife, he compared me to Richard Feynman. It was brilliant.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Be my guest. Yeah. No, because but that's one of those things, right? Like that. And part of the reason we do this podcast is people don't say that kind of stuff out loud very often.
Mm-hmm.
And so people think it's not possible.
Yeah.
They don't hear possibility. Because way too many people who are uncomfortable with the risk, they just talk about why we can't do this.
Right.
And the idea that, oh yeah, we can.
Yeah.
I don't know how right this minute necessarily, but we can figure it out.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or it violates the third law of thermodynamics, and
in which case maybe the law is wrong. Let's figure it out.
Right. One of these days we're going to look back and go, that was a fun myth.
Yeah.
But it was totally wrong. It's like, given I'm convinced that given a long enough timeline, everything we absolutely know to be right about science is going to become the punchline for a joke.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I don't think you and I will make it to that point, but I'd like to be there and hear it. I'd like to hear that joke.
Well, there's like some of them already happened, right? In the courses of our, in the course of our lives, like
Mhm.
when you were a kid, you had dial-up phones, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
We had rotary phones.
Yeah, rotary phones. Yeah. So the phone companies way back, like cell phones have been around for they were around for at least 10 years before they became normal in the world.
Mhm.
And they weren't because the technology is available. They didn't get released because the phone companies, and there's a bunch of different documentation on this.
Uh-huh.
Phone companies released that audio quality was more important over the copper wire than the convenience of having a phone you could travel with.
Yeah. Yeah. You're
And so
talking
they
to
would,
a phone guy whose whole family, like my roots go back like 50 years in the phone business. 100%. I lived it. Yeah. And
yeah,
I remember VoIP was in a similar situation. I came out in 98 and we were just looking at putting voice over packet. My master's thesis is on voice over packet back when it was called packet telephony and it wasn't cool at all. And I said, nobody's going to use this because it sounds like crap and everybody needs this great audio quality. I grew up on the Sprint commercials with pin drop and all that. And people were like, but it's cheap and it's easy and it breaks the phone monopoly. And then it just took off like wildfire.
yeah. Just, it's just another one of those things. And yeah, I'm just waiting for the laws of thermodynamics to all become oops. We
Yeah,
weren't quite accurate there.
exactly. Exactly. The time travel's right after that though. So that's really exciting to look forward to, I think. Yeah.
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 Yeah. I'm a little terrified of that.
You should be. You should
Yeah.
be.
Yeah.
It's really scary. Uh,
Yeah.
I will recommend a film for you for time travel that will it's probably the best movie on time travel ever made.
Okay. What is it?
It's called Primer. It's it,
Primer.
it's a low budget flick about nerds in a garage that accidentally invent time travel and it's a very practical time travel motif. And of course
Okay.
bad things happen. Bad things
Bad things happen. Yeah, of course. Well, yeah.
good.
Yeah. Because otherwise, why would you make a movie if only good things happen, right?
Yeah. Yeah, even Disney, they killed off the deer. Like, yeah, there's gotta be
Right.
some tragedy in everyone.
There's got to be, yeah, that's the nature of life. Oh my God. Too funny. God, we've gone all over the place. Disney, Feynman, leadership. And it wasn't an ayahuasca journey, which is awesome.
I can't promise anything. I can neither confirm nor deny the presence of ayahuasca in this conversation.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, I haven't tried it yet and I'm terrified of it. So and I don't have anything I want to fix
That's
like
right.
that. So
That's right.
yeah. Well, cool. This has been awesome. Thank you so much.